Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty central to education, valued thinking.
hmm
You've probably heard the term or ideas like it. We're going to sort of unpack it, look at where it came from and maybe where it's headed.
Exactly.
Mm.
And our main guide for this is a really thorough article from the Educational Psychology Review.
Yeah.
It pulls together a lot of different threads, philosophical and psychological.
Yeah, it synthesizes quite a bit. So if you're looking to get a solid, quick grasp on this, but, understand the different angles, this is for you.
Right.
Our mission really is to trace how ideas about what counts as good thinking in education have changed over time. We want to give you those aha moments, looking at multiple perspectives without getting totally bogged down.
Precisely. By the end, you should have a much clearer picture of how we got to our current understanding of, well, thinking skills in schools.
Okay, let's dive in. The article kicks off with the philosophical roots. It points to three big Western traditions: rationalism, empiricism, and pragmatism.
Yeah, these might sound a bit heavy, but the core ideas have had a massive influence, and they're actually quite distinct.
So, rationalism first.
Right. Rationalism basically puts its faith in reason, logic. The idea is that we can figure things out, deduce truths, mainly using our minds, kind of like building knowledge from the inside out.
So thinking that's logical, coherent, that's highly valued there.
Exactly. And you can see how that might push education towards things like, well, formal logic, math, subjects, emphasizing pure reason early on.
Okay, makes sense. It's about our innate capacity to reason. Then there's empiricism, which is different.
Almost the flip side, yeah. Empiricism says, hold on, knowledge comes primarily from experience. What we see, hear, touch our senses, it's learning from the outside in.
So valued thinking becomes about observation, gathering evidence.
Being observant, collecting data, basing conclusions on that sensory input. You can see the seeds of like evidence-based practice there.
Okay, and the third one, pragmatism.
Pragmatism asks a different question. Does it work? Is this idea useful in practice? It's all about the practical consequences of our thoughts and actions.
So less about abstract truth, more about real-world application.
Pretty much. Valued thinking, for a pragmatist, is about solving problems, achieving goals, making things happen. It shifts the focus towards skills you can actually use. Think competency-based learning, project-based stuff.
Right.
So those three, recent experience and practical application, they really set the stage, for everything that followed in how we think about thinking.
Okay, so that's the philosophical groundwork. Then the article moves into the psychological side, tracing things through, let's see, introspection, positivism, and the cognitive revolution. Can you walk us through that evolution?
Sure. Introspection was, well, one of the earliest methods.
Yeah.
Psychologists literally asked people to look inward, examine their own thoughts and feelings.
Sounds subjective.
Very, and hard to verify, right? How do you check someone else's internal experience? So that led partly to positivism.
Which was more scientific.
That was the aim. Like empiricism in philosophy, positivism in psychology stressed objective observation, measurable behavior. Forget the messy internal stuff. Let's just study what we can actually see and measure.
So stimulus response kind of thing. Input, output.
Sort of, yeah. Focus on the external.
Yeah.
But that felt limiting too. Which brings us to the cognitive revolution, mid-20th century.
Ah, bringing the mind back in.
Exactly. Researchers realized you couldn't really understand behavior without understanding the internal mental processes, memory, attention, problem solving, how we process information.
The whole computer analogy became big then, right? The mind as an information processor.
Yeah, that was a powerful metaphor. It gave psychologists new ways to think about and model what's happening inside the head.
Okay, so this cognitive shift.
Yeah.
Is this where we start getting terms like higher order thinking and critical thinking that feel more familiar today?
Definitely. These concepts really bloom out of that cognitive perspective. Building on all the earlier ideas, of course, higher order thinking is generally, about going beyond just memorizing facts.
Like analyzing, evaluating.
Exactly. Synthesizing information, creating new ideas, solving complex problems, skills beyond basic recall.
And critical thinking, that term is everywhere.
It is. And while definitions vary, it generally involves that higher order stuff, but often adds a layer of objective analysis. Identifying biases, evaluating the strength of evidence, logical reasoning, forming sound judgments.
So you can really see a progression there from broad ideas about reason to more specific skills we want students to develop.
Precisely. It shows how these concepts didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Now, their article also raises a really significant point, something about Well, who has historically shaped this narrative of valued thinking?
Yes, that's a critical reflection in the piece. It points out that historically and even often today, the conversation has been dominated by white male scholars, particularly from Western
Okay,
backgrounds.
and the implication there is,
Well, the article suggests we should consider whether this has led to a potentially narrow view. Not to dismiss the contributions made, but to ask if other perspectives, other ways of knowing and thinking might have been overlooked or undervalued because the conversation was shaped primarily by one group.
right, does focusing on certain voices mean we miss out on what other cultures or groups might consider valuable thinking?
That's exactly the question it prompts, and that leads into the next part of the discussion in the article, which is about, well, liberating our understanding, broadening the picture.
Okay, so moving beyond the traditional Western framework, how does it suggest doing that?
It highlights the importance of bringing in perspectives from more diverse intellectual traditions. Specifically, it mentions critical philosophies and pedagogical approaches developed by scholars, often from the Global South.
Ah, so thinkers whose ideas are rooted in different contexts, different experiences.
Exactly. Different cultural, social, historical backgrounds often lead to different ways of framing problems, understanding knowledge, and valuing certain kinds of thinking, perhaps focusing more on community or justice or different forms of reasoning.
The article specifically brings up Mendietta's work, noting its influence on contemporary American scholars who are pushing back against dominant norms.
Yes, that's an important connection the article makes in its notes. While its main focus shifts to analyzing critical American scholars from minoritized groups, it acknowledges that their work often draws significantly on these broader global theories, particularly from Latin American philosophy and critical theory from the Global South.
So, recognizing the roots of some contemporary critical perspectives.
Right. Thinkers from the Global South have long histories of analyzing power, colonialism, knowledge production. Their ideas about liberation, decolonization, and alternative ways of knowing are deeply relevant when we reconsider what valued thinking means. They often bring issues of social justice and power dynamics right to the forefront.
So, the article isn't just saying add more voices, it's suggesting these other traditions might offer fundamentally different and valuable ways to conceptualize thinking itself.
That's the core idea, yes.
Yay.
Engaging with this wider range of perspectives can help us identify blind spots in the more established views and ultimately build a richer, more nuanced understanding of valued thinking for everyone.
Especially important in diverse classrooms today, I imagine.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's try and synthesize this. For our listeners, what are the key takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, first, I think it's seeing that journey, how philosophical ideas about reason, experience, and practicality laid the groundwork.
Right.
Then how psychology built on that, moving from introspection to behavior, and then back to the mind with a cognitive revolution, giving us concepts like critical thinking.
Okay, the historical flow. What else?
Second, and this is crucial, recognizing, as the article emphasizes, the historical context. Who was shaping these ideas, acknowledging that it was largely a specific demographic group,
Which leads to the third point.
which is the call to broaden our lens, to actively seek out valuable thinking, drawing from critical traditions, including those influenced by Global South scholars and contemporary critical thinkers.
And that connects back to our mission, right? Finding those aha moments
Yeah.
by looking at things from different angles. Understanding these other viewpoints is the way to a deeper insight.
Exactly. Recognizing these different intellectual lineages can really shift how we understand thinking itself. It's not just one thing.
So, putting it all together, understanding the history and embracing diversity leads to a much more robust, more complete picture of valued thinking today.
I think that sums it up well. It encourages us to move beyond maybe narrow or culturally specific definitions and think more expansively about intelligence and knowledge.
This has been really illuminating. Lots to think about there. And maybe here's a final thought for everyone listening to consider. We've seen that valued thinking isn't static, it evolves. So considering all these diverse perspectives we've touched on, what might the future education look like if it truly aims to nurture valuable thinking in all its forms? Where do we go next?
That's the big question, isn't it?